All right, let's do a brief recap, possibly for YouTube, but possibly just in general. So, Northern Raiders starts. Really nice layout for raiding. A little bit of early snowballs on some weapons. Not much armor from that. Dipping down south for a little bit of money and renown. And then back up for some more raiding and a bunch of camp busting. And had some close fights, but some good ones. Haven't had to do much saves coming here. 1 or 2 for the barbarians. Just trying to tackle something a little bit above our pay grade. But we also got some other ones which were quite capable fights. So the company's in fairly good health. We just made a lot of money off selling garbage. We're sitting here at a citadel, just about to decide if we want to take a hedge knight that's available there. We got 12 brothers, the bulk of whom are around 5 to 7 in level. So we're hitting a big power spike on armor at 7. Need a couple more people to pick up. I have some kind of basic goals for today on the screen, but the run seems to be going pretty well. Anyways. 3 of 3 spreadsheet redemptions. All right, chat has spoken. They wished to be regaled by stories of spreadsheets. We'll do our best. A brief spreadsheet moment. All right, here is the build spreadsheet. What are we doing with this and why are we talking about it? So Wyo asked the question about why drop rotate. And the answer is that this build has been really good at making neutral to medium, making medium brothers good. So, all right, what are we getting? Okay, so I guess there's 2 questions, right? One was let's go over the builds because people ask for spreadsheets, and 2, let's talk about why no rotate. All right, so the builds we're running right now is we're trying out a new archer build. We really liked thrower archers in our last runs. We're trying a no recover build with no range defense, and the idea behind that is the stats you would put into range defense now get split between, or rather, normally it would be ranged attack, range defense, stamina with a little bit of HP and stamina mixed in. And now if we're not taking range defense ever, we take range attack, HP, stamina every single time. And that the idea behind it is, well, maybe we don't need range defense. The enemies shoot the lowest range defense target almost every single time. If you get a little tiny bit of range defense on your archers, like maybe just the 4 rolls, so you're like 20, 25 range defense, they're always going to shoot somebody else anyway. So more range defense isn't useful. We maybe don't need anticipate. So if we pick up some stat points from not taking range defense and a talent point from not taking anticipate. We're also going to try if that gave us enough stamina that we didn't have to run recover. Your archers tend to be fairly stamina neutral most of the time, except for very long fights where sometimes they need stamina, they need recover, and we're wondering if we could do without it. So the plan was to try that. So far, recover seems, I'm missing recover. I don't like Colossus on my archers particularly. That's what we took for recover. I'm looking forward to getting Headhunter, but we haven't, again, because I really like Headhunter just in general, but we haven't really got there yet. So I don't know yet. The answer is that we're still out. We still don't know about that build. We don't have any megas this playthrough yet because we just haven't recruited anyone with good enough melee defense who doesn't have good melee attack. So the melee build has not been checked yet. This build has been this was Graveby's recommendation. This build has been, or a variant of this build. This build has been interesting so far. This is the stam neutral build. So what does it give up? It gives up Killing Frenzy or it gives up Berserk. Berserk is the one that when you kill something, you get more AP so you can swing again. It can't afford to do that. Okay, so what does it gain? What does it lose? So loses rotate because it doesn't have excess stamina to be doing things like rotate or adrenaline or indomitable. So it loses those. And it gains, it lets you take a shittier brother, right? So the problem is this. You can't have a brother who has, most backgrounds do not support a brother who has really good melee defense, really good melee attack, decent stamina, good HP, good resolve, right? It's just too many stats. So what this lets you do is it lets you drop leveling fatigue. If you have enough fatigue between a weapon spec, which makes your 2-handed weapon swing for 12, and then take Pathfinder, which makes 1 movement of terrain on pretty much any terrain. I'm not sure about swamp, probably not swamp. 1 movement of terrain, 3 stamina. That means every turn you recover 15 stamina. And every single turn then you can swing with this guy. And to make up for his lack of mobility, you give him a 2-handed weapon as well. So you give him a reach weapon. So that they have a 2-handed weapon and a reach weapon, and they basically attack once per round, every single round, but are fairly good at not stamming out, so they never have to take a turn to recover. They don't have to have a lot of starting fatigue, and they get a couple talent points back from losing things like Berserk possibly losing Killing Frenzy. We're still experimenting with that, and losing Rotate. So that's what it does. So the question then becomes, is this any good? There's some issues here, right? So we're still experimenting, right? So if we go back to the actual game characters right now, this swordsman we just picked up is likely going to be that build. But I'm wondering what we can do. Like, so far, all those have been nimble, and I don't want all of my brothers nimble for a couple of reasons. I want to be able to use the good armors I find, and nimble tends to not scale super well in terms of like dealing with cleavers or that type of shit. So I'm kind of wondering if I can really min-max that build and try like Battle Forge with like 20 stam remaining, and see if that neutral build can do that. Then all of those brothers can be Battle Forge brothers, and if they can all be Battle Forge brothers doing that build, then we can A, get a shit ton of nimble armor for the other brothers who would rather do other builds, and B, have a lot more sustainable over front line. So the issue is we give up rotate with that. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting, that idea. That's something new that we're testing out. That was a suggestion from a viewer. What else? Cleaver Generalist, this thing is fucking great. This is the whip build. So two-handed cleaver with a whip. I'm not sure we're going berserk on this right now. This is still a question for me. And the reason why this is a question is, it does have the stamina to do things. It's a stamina heavy build because it needs to be able to throw out whips all the time. But I'm not sure that it is actually attacking enough that I care about berserk. So we'll see. So like duelist cleaver, the duelist builds, rotate question more relevant there. Yeah, okay, we'll get there in a minute. Why would you make them nimble by default? Isn't the point to work with all no stam? Yeah, that's the point, WoW, but I hadn't really got there. I hadn't really realized they would be that efficient even at such a low amount of stam. And honestly, that doesn't quite work. So the question is, the zero stam builds, can they be so low stam that we can build them all Battle Forged? And there's a trade-off. And I think the answer why is going to be based on what I build them with, right? So the issue is this. So this weapon, the secondary portion of it is the stun, right? For the maces, the secondary attack is a stun. And the reach stun was actually pretty good. Not so good versus orcs, but it's been good versus other things. So if you go down to it, and you can't use that. The stun costs more stamina to attack with than the basic attack. So it's never going to be 12. It's much more expensive. So there is a question of, well, what secondary attacks do you care about for which weapons? So a part of me is kind of like, I don't know if I want, like, maybe nimble ones are use maces so they can have a chance to stun some of the time before they stam out. And maybe the axe ones, which never want to use the secondary attack, are going to be the Battle Forge ones that can just work with like only 20 stamina total or something. So I'm not sure yet. We're still playing with this build and seeing the extremes of behavior we can do with it, the extremes of builds that we can do with it to see how it helps us. So we're working on that. We're not entirely certain about that. All right. We're in the build. I like to have a little bit more fatigue so you start the fight with a net. Yeah, it's reasonable. Is it possible to use rotate on the stam neutral build? No, not really, because the stam neutral build can't recover stamina and it doesn't have a lot of max stamina. So it's extremely difficult to get rotates off. Isn't the stam neutral build going to be bad on the Kraken fight? It depends what the swamp cost is. So maybe. I haven't really thought about it, and I actually don't care about Kraken. Kraken only unlocks Watermelon. Watermill Sword has been not very good in my opinion. It's like okay for like Monolith, and no, it doesn't matter anywhere else. And even the like Riposte Dream build with the sword doesn't work because they just fucking shield bash you every single time you're riposting and cancel it. Indomitable playable? Probably. Indomitable used to be one of the most powerful traits you could take on a brother. We're going to build some still with Indomitable. We have to figure out who. Feels much more late game now, or tank specific. I have 2 builds right now that want to use Indomitable. I want to use them on my Duelists and I want to use them on my Megas, but I don't have any Megas right now, which is going to make the late game progression awkward because Megas are supposed to be filling the role of stand still, stand in a location and hold this location against all things moving towards it. The rest of the builds look like this. The Duelist build. So this Duelist build is still running. This is the one we're not entirely certain about this, right? So why does the Duelist build not have rotate? Maybe it should. Maybe we'll get it in there. We have to figure out what we can do with that. The problem is it wants so many things, right? The Duelist is so expensive in terms of talent picks to be strong. So I'm not entirely certain what we're going to do with this. Maybe we don't end up with Headhunter or Brawny, possibly. Like maybe maybe we end up with like nimble ones with rotate or something. We'll see. But the problem is everything on this you want. You want Berserk, you want Duelist, you want Killing Frenzy. These are all your damage bonuses for a Duelist build. You want some sort of defensive stat at 7. You want Underdog. Maybe Underdog is something we could talk about maybe getting rid of. Underdog lost a lot of value in my eyes with the way it changed. So there's some argument for that. The way that my understanding of how it actually works changed. you basically lost like 10, like 5 melee defense worth of value. Whereas 10 melee defense was really interesting to me. 5 melee defense on average is less interesting to me. It becomes like comparable to gifted. What else about these? So this is still very much, I've never tried to do a run based mostly around duelists, because duelists have always seemed to be the most extreme brothers ever, because they are so stat intensive to be good. So I don't know yet. I don't know if this is going to play out. Like we're missing some of the two-hander builds we'd like to see, right? So another problem with this low stam build is to support a weapon, you need to have the weapon, the reach version of that weapon as well, where you stam out, because you're relying on weapon spec plus Pathfinder to keep your stamina neutral. So if I don't have a reach sword weapon right now, it's very hard to use a two-handed sword on that brother, because I don't have the flexibility that I would get from that. So yeah, I could just run the two-handed sword and never switch weapons, but I'm giving up the flexibility of the quick hand stuff. And I don't have any sword, like whatever the new sword pikes are called, or sword arms, or whatever the hell they're called, right? So right now I'm limited by the fact that the reach weapons I have and the two-handers are not setting up nicely. So I just picked up a Mansplitter, so I could do Mansplitter plus reach weapon, although I can't do that on a stam neutral build because the Mansplitter takes more stamina. But as soon as I get a two-handed axe, I can build two-handed axe plus reach axe. When I have the maces right now, so I can do two-handed mace plus reach mace, and I may get hopefully I have the secondary hammer. We picked up one of the reach hammers from the noble fights, so if I get a two-handed hammer that doesn't suck, we can do that too. But yeah, the banner is doing what the banner does. I need another whip right now, because the whip has just been super good at mitigating very high threatening attacks right now, and I want about 2 to 3 of those in my group, and we have 1 right now. So I'd like to get another Cleaver duelist, the generalist over here, Cleaver generalist rather, and then I'd like to get the whip on the banner, so I can do that as well. And then finally, we're building this dagger build. This is the final one we'll talk about right now, and then we'll go back to playing the game, which is this is also an experimental build. This is to take advantage of the new, the fact that we're running a lot of maces, so we should have a fair amount of days going out, and B, that, actually thinking about this is going to be hard as fuck to work with, right? Because to get the value out of this, we're going to be 2 competing drives. We're going to be dealing with Overwhelm wants us to act early, and to do extra damage, we want the opponent to be dazed, which means we need someone else to have gone first. But the goal of this is to try out the new dagger that does additional damage to targets that are disabled in some way, stunned, netted, dazed, etc. So we're going to try that out. We have one brother who's built that way as well. So those are the builds we're working with. That's why we're doing them. A lot of these builds, I like some of the stuff in these builds I really like. Like I like the fact that both these builds take early gifted and then branch out later. And I kind of want to build that into the duelist too. So maybe if we could do that, because what it allows for is it allows you for the real sequence of events happens to be you pick up a brother. The brother looks either has good stats, but not guaranteed those stats, or he doesn't look like he has particularly great growth, but then he rolls super high. In either of those scenarios, it would be nice to be able to react to what has happened in the game to build a brother, rather than be like, you're going to be this brother, you're going to be this role from the get-go. So why is Whip good? Because Whip has a secondary attack called Disarm that takes a really, really scary enemy like a Orc Warlord with a fucking two-handed axe and makes him hit you with his fists for like no damage. Can you switch out Student for early gifted? Anyone asking that question seems to get asked a lot. It just means you fundamentally don't understand how Student works, right? Student is a perk early that gives you that perk back later. So Student is a free perk. What it does, what Student does for your character is it makes your levels go faster, but makes your talents go slower up to a point. And then after a certain point, you're just faster in everything. So you delay your guy being immediately useful by taking something that increases your experience. And then when you get to max level, you get the student point refunded. You can't ever substitute something else in a build for student, because you don't get you haven't gained a perk point by that. You've just broken equal on a perk point. So when I tend to take student on brothers who are going to level, who I know are going to be good, so I want them to stay alive, and who aren't immediately in danger, who don't need immediate defensive perks. Where I do the opposite, right? In the beginning of the game, like if I have a brother who I'm not sure they're going to live or die, they're very early going to want to take Colossus and Gifted to get as many stat points on the board as possible to stay alive. I know Anticipation, already answered that. Basically, we're trying no range defense builds. Gunner, I haven't seen use for gunners yet, Mr. Edio. The only place I could see them being good right now with the late game fights that I'm worried about is maybe they could AoE Orc Young in the front when those huge Orc camps spread around you. Maybe. But it seems to me like the lack of armor penetration with that ability is just not very exciting. I mean, maybe the overwhelm is good enough. I don't know. We want to build a gunner, but we tried one and were super unimpressed with it earlier. So we maybe need to build another one. I guess if you could choose a single perk for rotate on builds, which would it be? I don't know what you're asking. Wow. Do you mean what perk would I drop to pick up rotate? What makes using the whip disarm reliable? It's a melee attack skill, and you have to have cleaver spec. So the base whip ability is like -20 or something, but if you take the spec, it's not minus anything. You only get one roll at it because it's a 5 AP attack, I believe, if I remember correctly. But what makes it reliable is having a high melee attack brother with cleaver spec. I tried the crippling strike and damaging ability on my team. I don't tend to like that, but we are trying the crippling strike with the maces to see how often we can generate wounds. Wounding orc warriors would actually be valuable. So we just picked up crippling strikes. It's kind of late in the build, so we don't know how impactful it is yet. You're building my brother guide? I did a guide video talking about the builds I've used in my previous run, the last season, and I just talked about this one. I mean, I guess from my perspective, there's two real benefits. The two things you're building for. You're doing this. You're trying to survive the game as it throws things at you, and you're also trying to build for the future of your team, right? So it's a straight up balancing act on that, right? Because you could take brothers who might be good later with powerful builds later when they get the gear and armor, and you could make them into decent brothers now who will not be as good as they could have been if you spec them differently later. And the benefit of doing that is you have a brother who carries your team in the meantime. So it's all a balancing act in that. Any one skill to get rid of WoW for rotate? Non-damage skills, probably either underdog, maybe gifted, maybe brawny, maybe, I don't know, something like that. WoW. Would mass gunners be good? I think gunner might be something that would be very good in the backgrounds that allow you to have lots and lots of people. Like both the militia background and the indebted background, maybe gunners would be better. I'm not sure. I can't answer the gunner question because I haven't seen them enough to figure out where they will be good. They must be good somewhere. I just haven't found it yet. But yes, it does feel like that would be a build that would benefit from having more than one, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to AoE morale or AoE debuff the opponent with the gun. It's the only thing the gun does well, is it AoEs. That's it. It doesn't do good damage. It doesn't have good penetration. So if it has enough penetration, you can proc Fearsome. That's interesting. Where is it? Here. And if it has enough, if you have a brother who's fast enough, you can get Overwhelm. That's okay too, if you're overwhelming 4 targets. But even then, the targeting on that thing is awkward as fuck. So I don't know. We're going to play with the gunner more. Okay, we're going to go back to playing.